You know, we're the kind of bird species that only has mates for life.
Oh, the pair bonding type?
Yeah. We bond with pairs, is what that mostly means. I'm a not so much a fan of Asian pairs for Bosch pairs. Hi, friends. Tonight we asked the compellingly interesting question in my second in an indeterminate length series of video live streams about the 7 deadly sins. Which is worse, wrath or envy? Which is worse, wrath or envy as a sin? Wrath we might call spite. Envy we might call jealousy. The thing is, it would seem as though wrath is often enough, perhaps, envy made concretized envy, or envy directed externally. But not necessarily. I mean, wrath could be a sense of just, I despise this person and want to make them suffer, I guess.
True.
That may not stem from envy. It may stem from something else. Certainly, people can be wrathful when they feel as though an injustice has been perpetrated against them. So, in that instance, it would seem like a certain amount of responsive wrath is appropriate, and a certain amount of like healthy recognition of the accomplishment of others is not a bad thing either. Whether that comprises jealousy or envy or whatever is harder to say. Let me pop out this live chat and see if it's working. I don't have anybody having said anything yet. So I'm going to, sometimes there we go. You can be wrathful. Hey-o, wrathful ones. It seems like to a certain extent, justice entails at least a smidgen of wrath. Envy can be channeled into something positive. Wrath usually ends in disaster when followed. So, I mean, this is the thing. Do we define wrath as negativity without a claim to justice? Because it would seem as though if we were to say spite would seem to be a word that we use when we're trying to indicate that the person is trying to inflict harm simply out of a desire to see that thing that they're inflicting harm on, whether it be a person or animal or whatever, to see that entity experience harm, rather than out of a sense that some equilibrium needs to be restored. So, but at the same time, I suspect that a lot of times when people are engaged in what I might call spite or reasonless wrath, they believe themselves to be responsive to some injustice. Well, I mean, envy or jealousy may or may not be expressed out loud. To the extent that it's expressed out loud, it probably isn't consuming you. So, like, one good defense against envy is to say, this thing is so good that it makes me feel envy. And then it kind of disempowers it, because what genuine envy makes you want to do is hate on stuff that's really good, right? That's sort of an unself-aware envy. Self-aware envy tends not to really be envy, but so much as due recognition or acknowledgement, humility, I guess. Wrath connotes a reactive anger, in my view. Okay, well, I agree that wrath connotes some reactivity to it, whereas spite does not. And spite specifically connotes some lack of responsiveness as a consequence that wrath does. But that responsiveness makes me think that wrath includes some claim to justice usually, whereas spite does not. And envy is, I guess, inherently contrary to justice. It's the sense that better outcomes ought not be linked to better attainment processes or something. Envy destroys you from the inside. Wrath tends to have more impact on your environment. Yeah, probably true. Jealousy is the desire to not lose something yourself. Well, I mean, there are different kinds of jealousy / envy, right? So like sexual jealousy, in my opinion, is it doesn't make it good, but it's natural, which is to say, if you don't do anything, you'll feel sexual jealousy as soon as you feel like attachment to an individual. I think envy implies the desire for someone else to lose something, whereas jealousy is the desire to have it too, or jealousy is the desire to not lose something yourself. Interesting. It's an interesting distinction. Objectively speaking, envy is worse. Envy leads to coveting, another major sin. But I mean, wrath leads to killing, potentially. Right? Wrath leads to harm induction. So when envy is felt, it's like a mirror. Why would one be envious? Because someone else possesses a trait, object, or state of being that they lack and want. It's all about how the envious person responds to the emotion. I guess I'm at this point in my life not particularly subject to unself-aware envy. Like, I guess I recognize when I'm feeling threatened by something rather than when I'm legitimately critiquing it. I can tell the difference. When I'm feeling threatened by something, my recognition of its good qualities is much stronger than my inclination to run away from being threatened, you know. Well, certainly sexual jealousy can. But it's really not sexual jealousy leading to murder. It's betrayal leading to murder, right? I feel like envy is definitely more useful than wrath if you look at it in the right way. Envy can be a frame of reference through which one attains a sense of inspiration. You know, it's like as a debate coach, when I have kids and starting up, you know, you want to manage their expectation levels. So if they're too confident, you want to put them into something a little bit too hard for them, but not too much too hard for them. You don't want to disillusion them or get them demotivated by, oh my God, these people are so good, I'm never going to be able to climb this mountain. And you also don't want to play into any misconceptions about what they're getting into. So you want them to feel like, oh shit, this is something I didn't really understand before. Now I'm starting to understand it, and I realize I could actually be really good at this and beat these people. In other words, you kind of want a kid to lose in their first outing instead of win. If you love talking to that side of my face, you'll really love talking to this side of my face. Oh, Eric, this side of your face is much better. Thanks for changing sides of face. It is better, isn't it? Yeah. 47 years ago, I sat and showed Leaf Trimmer the side of my face. Leaf Trimmer, I said, come here, stand before me. And then slowly, ever so slowly, did I turn my head thusly. And he then did seeth the side of my face.
The thing you don't know about the side of his face is that it's so soft.
Mm-hmm. It's soft as your mom's ass. I tell you, your mom's ass is really soft.
You didn't know that about Hoster. He's a mom's ass toucher.
Envy is worse because it's ultimately disingenuous, where wrath can be purposeful. Well, I mean, it really comes up to the question then again of, do we include in wrath something that we don't typically include with spite? Usually the word is wrath, right? I could, if you'd like me to. I need to put on a more aristocratic hat, of course.
There you go.
But we don't really know that, do we? Do we? No, we don't. I suggest perhaps we oughtn't argue about these matters that are best left to more common folk. Come, let us go foxing. We ride horses and have dogs and guns, and one of us will shoot the fox as it's running in terror. It'll be delightful good fun. Who'd like to join me for a farcical adventure of fox hunting?
I like the way you say fox hunting.
Tally-ho! Yes, I am a British aristocrat tonight. And every night here on British Aristocrats, the exciting new show about being an earl, a baron, a duke, a marquis, and a sir all at the same time.
And a sir.
Mm-hmm. I'm a baroque. I'm a baroque. It's a combination of a baron, an earl, a marquis, and a duke. Wrath is worse, says Oliver Lionhand. Well, what we're currently discussing is whether or not, and I'm not getting any response from anybody on this question, whether or not wrath precludes a justice-based claim in the same way that spite does. The word spite would seem to preclude a justice-based claim. Am I a viscount? I'm a vice viscount.
It's a viceroy.
A vice viscount is a viceroy's vice president. No, I didn't see Destiny versus Bosch, Dave Sanderson. Last time I was live streaming, then we stopped live streaming. We chilled a bit, smoked some bowls, watched some cartoons before I had to work. Then I worked. Then we went and got dinner, and we came back and started live streaming. No, I did not look at your debate thing. I did consider, I am still considering making an article about this epistemic, what do they call it? Epistemic security. It was a really appalling article that I read. We talked about epistemic security, which is basically about the problems of disinformation and people believing bullshit. So what's really fucking offensive is this woman presents the existing dominant COVID narrative as an example of something about which we should all be factually agreed. Of course, what does she end up doing? She ends up strawmanning anybody who would legitimately argue against the COVID narrative with good arguments like me, and doesn't address any of the good arguments I make, and nevertheless throws me into a camp of people who comprise an element of epistemic security risk because I don't agree with her position on COVID. That's like the worst thing in the world, right? To both legitimately point to a concern, epistemic security, and then to demonstrate the worst violation of that imaginable as a means of being an advocate for your agenda. It's like that woman deserved to be slapped down in a video hard. It's like deeply offensive. Okay, so Legends Fall, my point would be this, that if you wanted to call them sins, you'd be better served to call it spite than wrath. Okay, that as called wrath, envy is the worst sin. If it were spite and envy, I would say spite is the worst sin. But wrath would seem to me to include a sense that it's reactive to something, right? Something induces your wrath. Whether or not your wrath is legitimately induced is a separate question. I mean, I think spite's a better word. Vengeance, again, implies responsivity to something. Spite doesn't. So, I remember reading a story in which in Sherwood Anderson's Winesburg, Ohio, where one of the bad guy characters kills a dog, and the author explains that the character was just looking for an excuse to strike out at the dog. It was purely spiteful. That, in other words, it wasn't actually responsive, although he got some semblance of an excuse from the dog growling. I believe it is kind of interesting. Multiple confrontations at 2 locations. Those who had been chasing him were physically confronting Rittenhouse at the time they were shot. Huh. I mean, the thing is, Kyle Rittenhouse clearly is going out looking for justification to shoot, right? So that's an example of spite rather than wrath. In other words, he was excited by the prospect of being given an excuse to do harm to a movement that he deemed wrong, right? So, is it self-defense? Well, now, in my mind, right off the bat, I would say that no, it doesn't comprise legitimate self-defense because he went out looking for a justification, and that legitimate self-defense considers that factor as well. How can a deity both be infallible and jealous at the same time? Why are we concluding that God's jealous? And who's he jealous of? What is wrath? Well, that's what we're discussing at the moment, actually, is does wrath necessarily preclude a justice-based claim? And we seem to agree that wrath implies a reactivity to it that spite doesn't. So, in other words, God is jealous of Oliver Linehand's big titty goth girlfriend. I could fairly call Rachel that now.
She's got black hair. Her hair's dyed black. I could call her my big titty goth girlfriend. Big old titties, I'll tell you. Wrath is like super duper angry. I once said to my boss, my former boss at Kuda, that I was like, well, I don't want to incur your wrath. And she said, only gods have wrath. No. I didn't bother to correct her, but anyway, Rachel, I hope you're not making God jealous of me. Roth is like super duper angry. Hassan is an ESFP. Uh-oh. That sounds like an infuriating thing to watch then. You need to put that in scare quotes, David Sanderson. He obviously doesn't do real political commentary. He does. Yeah. Okay, good. You don't flirt with God or you're going to make him super jealous. When you're naked by yourself, you should cover up your nipples so that God doesn't see them. It was Bausch versus Destiny. Okay. I mean, innocent by reason of self-defense. Why am I saying what, Luke Trummer? My jokes about God and Rachel titties? Because I'm not all like weirdly reactive against purported blasphemy like you are. I expect God smarter than me, right? So he's going to be even less offended by things than I am, not more offended by things than me. If I can see how silly it is to be offended by that, then surely he can. I mean, this is the issue. It's like a debate like that will come down to, if you want to say it's about property rights, fine. Defending property is an adequate justification for some sort of use of force. However, that's not what happened in this case. He went out looking for property to defend. It wasn't even his property he was defending. And if you want to say, well, it was self-defense of his person, it is true that these people were, a couple of them at least were engaging with him. But if you go out and incite the justification you then use to execute deadly force, to me, that's not justified. So he went out intentionally looking to create a circumstance in which he'd be justified in using deadly force. There's another case like this in Florida as well. If I'm a juror, I don't buy that as an acceptable instance of self-defense, even if it meets the criteria without that contextual reference point. So that's what the debate comes down to, whether or not self-defense requires one to naturally encounter the self-defense incident or not. What's the context regarding titties and God? Oh, Oliver Linehand said God's jealous of his big titty goth girlfriend. That's what started the commentary in that area. Yeah, well. You're the one getting rained on, Lee Truman. Are you sure you haven't angered God? Yeah, Hal Taylor, we're talking about that Rittenhouse kid. So it's like, if I was going to, quote unquote, debate somebody about it, it would be annoying. If I were even to watch a debate about it, now that I know
now that it doesn't surprise me anymore what the arguments are going to be. It's not very interesting. It's like both people should agree right away that it boils down to your definition of self-defense and whether and the time frame, basically your time frame and contextual considerations as to whether or not something has to be a naturally occurring incident or whether you can create a circumstance in which you then use force as a it's justified purportedly by your need to defend yourself. It certainly would run afoul of the spirit of self-defense if we allowed that sort of thing to happen. So, in other words, you might be legally, literally correct in your actions. In other words, just because I taunt you a bunch verbally doesn't excuse you from hitting me, right? But if I taunt you a bunch verbally, having a hidden gun, knowing I have a hidden gun, and then you punch me and then I shoot you dead, in my mind, that's not self-defense. Hello, male dog. Well, I mean, the thing is, of course, it's also the case that if he's holding a weapon that's not concealed, that he's walking around and just saying words and expressing himself as a legitimate form of protest, then if he were struck first, in that context, both parties have an equal responsibility to not engage in the initiating violence, right? So it's not Christian talk again. God, you don't have to be a Christian to believe in wickedness. You know, envy and wrath are both considered sinful by people, regardless of whether they think of them as being a Christian sin or not, right? Nobody goes, you know what I want as a best friend? Somebody who's really wrathful and envious, you know? Tiny Man 66, have you ever heard me evangelize at you at all? Have you ever heard anything from me remotely, even remotely similar to anything EJR&D has ever said about God? No. I mean, it's true that hummingbirds and peacocks are both birds, but to complain about all the large blue-feathered fowl clogging your backyard when you see a hummingbird is just silly. I mean, the thing is, what I hate is the insistence on removing sort of age-old methodologies of talking about people's moral behavior from the language. Like it's, if I say something's wicked, people presume I have some sort of religious moral frame. Whereas if I say something is violating the non-aggression protocols or something, people think I'm fine. I'm a libertarian. You know, if I say it's a sin, they think I'm a Christian. I mean, I am a Christian, but the point is that's not you're missing the meta point, right? Eric, you're lucky that Lynn Wood, that lawyer, isn't watching the stream. What lawyer? Lynn Wood. I don't know who that is. Well, there are plenty of people who, based on what they predicted some long time ago, would say that hell must currently be freezing over. Lynn Wood is a close friend of Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman.
Do you guys know about Ting Tong Ling Long, the Chinese restaurant in UCLA? I guess an example of how things should play out. So, once upon a time, there was a Orange County girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, who made this racist YouTube video or something called, in which she's complaining about Chinese people going to school at UCLA. And then she ends the video with this thing where she's like, and I'm studying poli-sci. I'm about to have like an epiphany. And it's like, ting dong, ling long. You know, so it got famous for being so offensive, I guess, and kind of went viral. And then this Chinese dude made this video called Ting Tong Ling Long, in which he says, you know, Ching Chong means I love you. Ling Long means I want you. Ting Tong, I still don't know what that means, or something like that. It's a really funny song. And then somebody opened up a Chinese restaurant near UCLA called Ting Tong Ling Long Chinese Restaurant, which is pretty great, right? So it's like that's how you win those arguments. You win those arguments by winning those arguments. They're so easy to win, right? You make fun of it. You don't gasp in horror at it, right? Well, you know, a lot of people mispronounce his name as Gary Oldman. He's made it clear, he released a recent press release to announce that he wants all media outlets to refer to him henceforth as Gary Oldman. Me at Dick's. What does that mean? You've never seen anyone pull off a fedora like Eric does. And it's the same way with you and Dick's. Never seen anybody pull off a dick as well as you do. So anyway, it would be cool to start a political party called the Ting Tong Ling Long Political Party. It was all about how stupid identitarianism is. Oh, you don't pull horror out of it. You make fun of it, right? You don't express. Oh my gosh, you're racist. I mean, if there's generally something wrong with what they're saying, then it should be easy to make fun of. Envy can take time to whip up something terrible. Both can be used as a man. I mean, the thing is, I've I guess you could say practiced unjustified jealousy before, sexual jealousy, which is to say, like, in those instances, it makes you controlling. You want to ask a bunch of questions. You want to look into their phone or whatever. I've been in that state before. I haven't been in it with Rachel, but I mean, I've been in that state before. And assuming there's not actually your partner not giving you a good reason for it, then it's probably you acting out some shit you learned in a previous relationship, you know? In other words, something makes you so untrusting. It's not just naturally occurring. In my first relationship, my first marriage, where I should have been, very suspicious because she was not a good woman who could be trusted. Instead, I was very naive and just assumed that, well, once you're married, nobody really cheats on each other. You know? Well, I was wrong. And I'm saying sexual jealousy can be either justified or not justified, right? So in other words, if your partner is doing things to make you jealous, like flirting with people, or worst case scenario, cheating, there's a line somewhere, right? Obviously, if they cross that line, the best thing to do is to break up with that person. But if you're new to being betrayed, you might think for a while that you can preserve that relationship or fix it in some way. And some people do end up staying together after one of them cheats. How did I meet my first wife? At a party that Corey and I threw at our house in Eagle Rock. I mean, I don't think that's true of girls. I don't think that most girls like it when their man gets jealous. I think that's an FI thing, that FI people, when they're together with each other, expect and accept jealousy as part of the course, part of the course. In other words, FI people understand the other party as something precious to them, and they need that other party to conform to their understanding of who they are that's precious. Whereas FE users tend to understand themselves as the problem, right? And the other person as the complainer, right? Have you ever talked to someone who's a legitimate moron, presuming themselves to be an expert thinker? Yeah, like every ESFP I've ever talked to, pretty much. Your ENTP stalker was really jealous. Well, I mean, ENTPs hate undefined relationships because we can't rely on our emotions to determine your value to us. So it's like, I need to know whether you are an acquaintance to whom I have no obligations or duties or expectations, a friend, a close friend, a temporary lover, a permanent lover, or what. I need to know right away. So I need to know whether I'm a permanent or temporary lover before either of us has any data on which to judge this, which is unreasonable, but is the case nevertheless. Jealousy is a feeling. When you act upon it in a not so acceptable way, it's annoying. I mean, it's not just a feeling. It's a frame of reference. In other words, a person who's practicing sexual jealousy, if it's unjustified, is I guess reinforcing the myth that they can control. They can use control mechanisms to determine the fidelity of their partner. It's not possible, It's like, do you think that the laws of logic hold universally, or just in this particular instance? Which law of logic is presumably being tested here in this particular instance, or holding or not holding? What do you mean by the laws of logic? Do you mean rules of inference, rules of equivalence? Do you mean quantification theory? Do you mean symbolic representation? Do you mean truth tables? What do you mean? There's a lot of stuff in logic, right? Take Logic 101, takes you. They take often in college. They take a full year with it, which is kind of crazy because I could teach all of conditional logic in a semester to younger people. So let's see. I mean, I can think of one law that you might say is related to logic, namely law of non-contradiction. Oh. So law of contradiction, law of excluded middle, and the principal identity. Right. So here's the thing. The law of non-contradiction is the key mechanism by which we can distinguish between what I call space objects and time objects. So does it apply universally? No, absolutely not. In other words, with time objects, it definitely doesn't apply. This YouTube video can both be and not be at the same time placed in context for different parties. Whether it is or is not is entirely determinant on whether you're engaging it. Your behavior, not the thing, right? Whereas, see the Eiffel Tower, if it's in France, then it's not someplace else, right? So the answer to the question is certainly no. They don't apply universally. They are functions of language, and whether or not they apply universally and to which parts of the universe they apply depends on which frame of reference they're expressing, basically. So a law of non-contradiction is a frame of reference that says when words are used to symbolize concrete things, physical world things, then they're subject to the law of non-contradiction. But it's not the case that words that aren't focused on purely physical link symbols are subject to the law of non-contradiction. In fact, they're expressly not subject to it. So the law of identity is very much expressly a law of language, right? So okay, so these three quote-unquote laws of logic or laws of thought. The first one is about types of objects, although it's often misinterpreted. It's not really understood correctly, right? The second one is that when you present things as binaries, you must treat them as binaries. Again, this is a law of discourse, not really of thought, right? So discourse comes with certain expectations in terms of how language will be treated within the process of that discourse. Is it the case that the law of the excluded middle is actually correct? No, it's not a law of reality or of logic or of thought or it's a law of discursive engagement, that I will attempt to present things as binaries. And if you're claiming that that P is exclusive of Q, and you're claiming that X is P, then X can't also be Q. Note, all logic stuff is conditional on and should be begun with if someone is claiming, right? Because they're language things. So the law of excluded middle is not correct. Do you hate my poem or do you love it? Well, actually, I neither hate nor love it, right? I feel medium about it. So is the law of excluded middle universal? Of course not. Absolutely not. That's ridiculous. Not everything is correctly described as binaries. And yet it's also true that not everything is correctly described as spectral. So there are things that are binary. While it's not true that you have to either love or hate my poem, it is true that you have to either have read my poem or not have read my poem, right? Those are different things. Those are different kinds of things, a different category of thing, which fundamentally is subject to different laws.
And the last one, the law of identity, is just a way of saying when we want to justify things universally, we have to pretend as though a conditional formally implies rather than is actually a conditional, as we normally use them naturally. If I say, if it freezes, the tomatoes will die, what I mean to say is that unless it freezes, the tomatoes won't die. And that's the meaning that's derived from it. Of course, that conditional is not based on anything except the fact that currently there's no indication of pending death. However, there is an indication of an event, and I'm linking those two things, right? Let's say it freezes and the tomatoes are still alive. It turns out I have a particularly hardy tomato plant, or it's underneath another tree that prevented it from getting frost on it. Then I was just simply wrong about the conditional. The conditional was false because the antecedent was true, but the consequent was false. So it's not about whether the laws of logic apply. It's about whether our status making regarding people's statements apply universally. And yes, they do. So discursively, it's critical that things justify universally. That means the correct answer to the question, did you love or hate my poem, is still neither if you didn't, right? So, and it is somewhere in between. It's that you feel medium about it. So, no, of course, laws of logic are not laws of logic at all. They're not laws of thought. That's ridiculous. It's saying, it's funny how inadequate like philosophers and philosophy is with philosophy. It's weird because I would expect the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy to be ahead of me on everything, basically, or equal to me. It's like I would expect a good philosophy website to understand things at least as well as I do, or better, because I'm not like, I don't know, I'm not a published philosopher. I don't have a PhD in it or something. But in fact, I consistently find that no matter how famous or well-known somebody is, no matter how well-respected a given source is, rarely do they understand reality anywhere close to as well as I do. You can't say that out loud. Oh, well, it's true anyway. I understand reality unusually well. It's like, wow, Eric, you sure are a reality expert. I'm like, I know. I know. Why are you biological clocking Tiny Man 66? Are you angry at her for being such a slut? Just because you're famous doesn't mean you're always right. I know, it doesn't. Exactly. But because I'm famous, nothing, but I am nevertheless generally right. It's like, if you think about it, right? The law of non-contradiction, the way David Sanderson asked the question is appropriate based on what it said there, right? But of course, that's not a law of any sort, a law of thought or a law of logic. It's ridiculous. You can falsify it instantly, right? Instantly falsify the claim that the law of the excluded middle is a law of thought or a law of logic. In fact, I had as a fallacy on my list of fallacies that he's teaching critical thinking and logic class, I had on there false dilemma, And the example I used was, do you hate my poem or do you love it? That's an example of a false dilemma. There's plenty of false dilemmas. So obviously law of excluded
middle is not universal or a law of any sort. I mean, it's weird how sometimes really obvious things escape people's notice, because people aren't used to thinking of words in terms of actual definitions. You need a rich, protective boyfriend? What are they going to protect you from? Are you at risk of being mauled by bears? You do live in Scandinavia or Finland or someplace, right? So there's a lot of bears up there. They're called Scanda bears. They're scandalous Scandinavian and Finnish bears who maul people at a moment's notice, insisting that it's for their own good. When interviewed, the bears always insist that the mauling was for the person's own good, but they never explain why. You're at risk of being stalked by insane YouTubers, believe it or not? Who? Not me. You're not talking about me. I'm not at risk of stalking you. I mean, I'm fine with buying. I try to afford the things that ought to be binary status, the things that ought to be spectral, matters of spectrum, sliding scale status. There are two different kinds of impacts in debate and two different kinds of warrants. And they're predicated on basically rules or standards. Standards are discretionary, rules are binary. The world comprises both, and I approve of the right arguments in the right context. So certain things require discretion and certain things require rule. If we want to say how old you have to be to drive, we need that to be a rule-based thing because we don't want to devote as much discretion to the matter as would have required if we had a law like you have to be mature enough to drive, right? That would be a discretionary kind of standard that we have to make a decision about in each instance. It might be a more correct, sort of morally correct way of adjudicating the thing because then each individual person is judged on their merits as to whether or not they're ready to drive. On the other hand, you might say it's less fair because it just means that people who can fake the merit heuristic for driving are going to get their licenses, but people who are not good at faking that merit heuristic are not. So, we end up with the system we end up with. Well, that's a good example of how argumentation goes too, right? There are, you could say you can drive whenever you pass the test. So if in fact it were a simple skills test, then there would be no age, right? If it were simply an age matter, there'd be no skills test. We split the difference and do both because we believe that a person needs not only to have the necessary physical skills and ability to drive and understanding of the rules, but also appropriate level of judgment. And we believe that children under a certain age don't have that kind of adequate judgment to be behind the wheel of a moving vehicle. So is that the right decision or the wrong decision? I'm not sure, but all I'm saying is exemplary of how argumentation in general goes. There are both binary arguments and sliding scale arguments. In other words, there are both rules-based arguments and discretion-based arguments. Discretion-based arguments tend to correlate with utilitarianism. Rules-based tend to correlate with deontology. And various arguments emerge from those implicit frames without people knowing that they're arguing under those frames, but only impacting under one of them sometimes. So it's like the critical thing to do is to, from my perspective as a meta-analyst, is to do the meta-analysis and say, okay, well, here's what you're doing, and here's what you're doing, and here's what you're doing, and here's what I'm doing too. Remember, I'm trying to, so what's the implicit frame of reference that I'm pitching here? What you might call a meta-rationalist frame of reference, which is contrary to a rationalist frame of reference in that it doesn't universally apply a limiting standard or a limiting principle as an adjudicatory mechanism for a given prescribed or proposed action or something. And you might claim, therefore, that it's subject to critique as being arbitrary because it doesn't have consistency to fall back on in terms of its frames of reference. But I would point out that we never can totalize a single metric, including consistency or rights or anything else. So as a consequence, we need to worry a lot more about how we decide things than what we decide. Apparently, Tiny Man 66 is a beautiful woman. This is not the first time I've heard about Tiny Man 66 complaining about thirsty guys being all thirsty up on her thirstiness, you know. But, you know, by and large, if you're clearly in a couple and you're conveying with your body language and such that you're not available, probably you'll not be subject to too much hey there, sup, how you doing, hey girl. You probably will be subject to not too much of that. If you continue to be subject to a lot of that, even when you're in a relationship and you feel 100% committed to the relationship, then it's possible you're just super, like, mind-bogglingly just sexually attractive or something. But usually gorgeous women are not subject to that much attention because not that many men are confident enough. Should everyone get a vote, or should you have to pass some sort of test to prove you have an understanding of what you're voting for, or an IQ test? I think that everyone should get a vote, and it should not be compulsory. It should be voluntary. That I researched this subject somewhat when the debate topic was the United States should have compulsory voting. And the answer is no, we should not have compulsory voting. And the main reason is because people actually self-police. If people who are less politically active tend to be less politically informed and tend to vote less often. The problem with any kind of test is that it invariably will become politicized. So currently, the people who vote the most are actually the people who are least qualified to vote. But it's not because they're not informed or they're not smart or they don't understand. It's because they're agenda-driven. So the most agenda-driven types are the most partisan, the most hardcore on one side or the other. And what it means to be partisan is not really to strongly support a party. It means to focus your attention on blaming the enemy. So those are the people who vote most frequently. People who blame the bad guys the most. It's those damn Democrats. It's those damn Republicans. People who say that the most are the ones who vote the most. It's not a good thing for them to vote, but they are very well informed. You might disagree with their interpretation of things. You might say their interpretation is non-factual even, and sometimes you'd be right. But that doesn't mean they haven't pursued a lot of information about the subject. So in other words, what we need to do is change the way we talk about voting and politics in general. We need to make it embarrassing to be a partisan activist. How did you arrive at this series on the 7 Deadly Sins? Is this something from an anime series? No, actually, this is just a... when I was... Rachel and I were being really lazy today. Like, I woke up at like 9:30, and like at 11:30, I was thinking about taking a nap. And I actually lay down for a little while, but I couldn't sleep, and I got back up and did stuff. Yeah, Donovan Mitchell, I do a couple of things. I'm a debate coach, competition debate coach, and a typologist. People pay me to type them, actually. I've got a typing session coming up this week. And yeah, I guess you could call me semi-retired compared to what most of my adult life has been. You know, most of my adult life was 60-hour work weeks, and you know, being a career guy, having a kid, raising a family, you know, supporting a family and so forth. That was the majority of my adult life. Oh, shocking! It's you. Oh, I didn't know the first time learning a hateful remark. So this is one of the things we can say. Like, all right, we can see spite from Donovan Mitchell here, who is the same person who came in probably with the Valentine's Day shit the other day, and so in this regard, what's a worse sin, wrath or envy? Donovan Mitchell, I think, is displaying more wrath, or actually most properly called spite, I guess. If he were just envious of me, it might express similarly, but he probably wouldn't be as persistent over time. This feels much more like spite. Whether that comprises wrath is another question. But as you can see, in terms of spite, it obviously harms Donovan Mitchell a lot more than it does me. You know, it's like it's kind of interesting for him to come in and do this shit. It keeps the live stream lively a bit. You know, it gives me a good example to work with. Gives me shit to build off of. I'm tailor made to win every single one of these exchanges, right? Both in terms of the forum, my advantages in terms of the forum, in terms of my cognitive function stack, my advantages in terms of language usage and such, and in terms of the facts. You know, it's like I'm an excellent boyfriend. And why is Rachel dating me? Well, I actually have a great deal of dating capital. I was kind of surprised to discover this myself, but I had to come to accept after my last relationship that I had a lot of dating capital. And there were a lot of chicks that I could sort of choose from. In fact, it was really uncomfortable and awkward. This one occasion where I was told to come into some group room and there was like chicks just kind of like waiting there, like auditioning or something, or I don't know. It was really like, oh, I can't take this. Makes me feel so uncomfortable. I've never been in this position. I don't like it. It's not cool, you know. Pathological douchebaggery is the eighth deadly sin. Hey, you know, I don't want to name any names. So I'm not talking about, you know, Beef Rimmer. And I'm not talking about Chief Kimmer, okay? I'm not talking about anybody in particular. But it is true that pathological douchebaggery is a phenomenon. I would not say that Leaf Trimmer is engaged in pathological douchebaggery. I would say that's more like Donovan Mitchell. That might be a better name for it than wrath. Pathological douchebaggery. But I would call Leaf Trimmer, mostly he demonstrates some ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. He's always looking for something to oppose or defy. Wrath is more destructive and has more opportunity for burned bridges. I guess. I think envy is more likely to make you passive aggressive, which is more likely to be effective than openly aggressive, I guess. If you're envious of somebody, you might be likely to sort of secretly do damage to them behind the scenes, whereas wrath, at least, is open. It's hard to imagine somebody being wrathful in a hidden way. That would have to be called something other than wrath, I guess. So in that regard, it's more honest, kind of, wrath is. Well,
Legends fall. Point there for Leaf Trimmer. You are kind of blind to Trump's egomania. I mean, you do get that Rachel smokes weed all day too, right? Rachel doesn't have to date me. She's welcome to break up with me if she wanted to. There's no law that forces her to be with me. I take her at her word when she expresses over and over again that she's extremely happy to be with me. And if anything is fearful that I have less attachment to her, which is not the case. I'm just as attached to her as she is to me. But she's definitely not imprisoned at all. It's like, is it that inconceivable to imagine that a woman might be happy to be dating me instead of unhappy to be dating me? That she might, instead of needing to be freed, that she might have scored or something? Hello, Morridge, my old friend. It's time to eat porridge with Ben and go into the forest after then and be a very boorish army man. Sloth and envy go together most of the time. We did sloth earlier today, Hal. When I questioned, is sloth really a sin? That's what made me start this sin thing. Is I was thinking like, God, Rachel and I, or particularly me, I was thinking about me, really, not Rachel, but I was thinking that, God, I'm being slothful. It made me think, is sloth really a sin? Is it really bad for me to be lazy? Because I spent so much of my life over prioritizing productivity, I think, Like, I spent a lot of my life feeling that I was completely worthless unless I was productive in some externally validatable manner. I needed to have something to show for everything. And, I used to speak very negatively to myself all the time. I'd curse at myself and call myself names and talk to myself about how worthless and stupid I was. It used to be a very steady narrative in my head. But, once I quit drinking, I started getting better as a human being. And that means I started being healthier about my own identity. I started understanding that I didn't. I guess in some sense, I no longer had a reason to hate myself so much. I wasn't persisting in a behavior I knew to be wrong. Once, when I was persisting in a behavior I knew to be at least ill-advised and even more accurately, morally wrong. Right, now I have YouTube trolls say stuff to me instead. Then the self-hatred was an inevitable kind of consequence of, it was a price I was going to pay for my alcohol, basically. If I wanted to continue drinking, I was going to have to hate myself because it's the only way I could stand the injustice of me being a drunk. I saw it as fundamentally unjust to myself and everybody else. And yet I did it all the time anyway. And when I stopped that, and it's like when you first quit drinking, you go through some stretches of, I guess, state change volatility. So it's like, you get very enthusiastic about something, very like fretful about a little thing, very
excited about some new idea. You're kind of like a ESFP for a little while, you know. And then after that, you kind of stabilize and you return to a world where you were before intentionally. So to quit drinking, I kind of had to shift out of action deliberation mode into interface mode and knowledge mode. I still use plenty of TI tool function, but I had to shift my frame of reference to say, in this instance, Eric, you are not relying on yourself to be correct about anything. In fact, you're not prioritizing correctness at all. You're prioritizing outcomes only, and the specific heuristic you're using is listen to them and do what they say. Of course, you can't stay in that kind of unnatural frame of reference forever, but it was a necessary shock to the system to get me out of the drinking. And once that occurred, I started having real adulthood onset. And the onset of real adulthood is one where, you know, it's like the primary virtue that it is predicated on is humility. Is our personality type more prone to envy than wrath? Well, I remember Rachel telling me a story about her ESFP roommate coming home one time and being mad, having been told that basically they aren't very deep. And she's coming home, storming home and saying, Rachel, what's a deep song I could listen to so I can prove to them how deep I am? Now, that's an example of, I guess, envy, or I don't know what you call that, but it's a complete, like, you know, it's wanting it seems like envy to me, because it's wanting the shiny thing without any understanding of what it means, you know. It's an example of not being deep. Yeah. No, they're not very deep. Well, I mean, of course, it depends what you're talking about the depth about. If, in fact, you're in a war, let's say you've got a combat platoon and you've got an ESFP on your squad, I bet their ability to put aside and ignore the pressing immediate physical concerns, to relegate relevance and truth to an insignificant matter occasionally checked, to live in a world that doesn't require things to be fair or equal or reasonable, that's the perfect kind of teammate to have in a war zone if you're in a frontline combat platoon or something, because that's the kind of perspective you need in that context, right? You need the perspective that talk's cheap, there's bullets flying at you. The words are meaningless because there's bullets flying at you. That all the logic in the world is either going to kill that guy over there or prevent you from being killed. You know, there's a lot of contexts that are less dramatic examples, but they're kind of equivalent examples that show you that depth is contextually specific to some extent too.
What's a deep thing to say in the middle of a firefight? It's a different answer than what's a deep thing to say in the middle of a discussion between college kids smoking pot late at night, you know? Well, I'm not saying they're necessarily the leader of the squad. I'm saying they're a good, you know, they're a good person to have next to you in the trench shooting at the enemy. When you go, oh, shit, what the fuck am I doing here? Why are we even here? What's going on? You're like, hey, you want to get home or not? You know, words are cheap. I don't want to. You know, it's like you need that kind of attitude in that context, right? That what happened yesterday is for yesterday. What happens tomorrow is for tomorrow. Right now, we got what's in front of us. Let's deal with it. We got our own particular frame of reference. We want to win. We got our own particular way of doing things. That is to say, we'll be responsive in the moment to changes in the moment. And as we perceive them, arbitrarily. It's perfect because you need to know what to do, not why, even somewhat not how. Most of all, you need to know what to do and do it. Yeah, I'm not. If I said in charge, my bad. I didn't mean to say put the ESFP in charge of tactics or strategy or anything like that, or even calling the shots. Just you know, they make good soldiers because they're the very definition of YOLO, as Dumb Genius says. So. I'm going to skip all the back and forth. I'm going to skip today's daily, fifth. He averages probably 5 arguments, five clashes per day. Leaf trimmer, I would guess. This is maybe the 5th of the day. I'm gonna not recap it for the listening audience. It's mostly Leaf Trimmer and Jeff Shaw exchanging snappy retorts, I guess, and playing. That's it. I'm done. I'm not going to talk anymore. Nope. That's it. I'm done. I'm not going to talk. No, I'm done. Tish. ESPs tend to make the same argument. Words don't matter. The better argument doesn't matter because people act irrationally. Said or winning is what matters. Well, right, but you deploy TI accuracy in trying to win. The problem is that you can't and won't even try to sustain the fact that words don't matter or a better argument doesn't matter because you're trying to make the better argument with good words right now, you know? So you'll go, okay, well, fine, but the point is other people don't, so that's why we have to do it this way. I'm like, so then you're saying you knowingly want to do the wrong thing because other people's wrongness? Fine, if you're right about other people's wrongness, you know, but it's typically not substantiated. Right. I agree. I mean, I think ESTPs in general have the following advantage over ENTPs. They have a better sense of when to stop deliberating and discussing something and talking and when to start executing, you know, a much better sense. Once something's been TI parsed, there's no further need to discuss it. It's been determined, and that's what you're going to go with. So, you know. SC's physical. You want to get physical. SC into physical. Let me hear your SC talk. Your SC talk. But SC doesn't talk. It just does things. I mean it metaphorically. Let me hear your body talk. Body talk. Let me hear your body talk. I don't literally mean your body's going to talk, as in some part of you other than your mouth is going to talk. I'm saying communicate with me physically with your body. You have a sexual appetite for me and my rod. I mean body pocket, because I'm Linda Ronstadt. Did Linda Ronstadt sing that song? No, Pat Benatar sang that song. Not Linda Ronstadt. Greetings, wisdom. Why did you put Linda Ronstadt in my brain? It's all your fault. Losing the I would make it sound more like swords clashing. Oh, I see. You could also do lightsabers clashing. Meow, meow. Meow, meow is how you spell lightsabers clashing. Giant auto glass warehouse management. I'm going to keep that in mind, Legends Fall. When I need a manager for my giant auto glass warehouse, I'm going headhunting. Olivia Newton-John. It's neither Pat Benatar nor, what was the other one I said? Rory Calhoun? What was it? I don't remember. Who was the other one I said that it was by? It's not Pat Benatar, and it's not that other one I said, but it is Olivia Newton-John, sometimes known as the Fig Newton of female pop singers. Olivia Newton-John is foxy. Let me see a picture of Olivia Newton-John. You know, this makes me think of a good new poll question. Which three named person do you want being do you want chaperoning your date? Okay. And then we've got Olivia Newton-John as one of them. Who are some other three named people? Other three named people. Olivia Newton-John. 1980s. Oh, yeah, she was pretty foxy. You're right, actually. She was foxy. I didn't realize how foxy she was, actually. I would have said, no, she wasn't very foxy. It was 70s chicks. But, you know, this first picture of her at groovehistory.com, she looks pretty good. I'll admit, she does look pretty good. She looks cute. She's kind of flat-chested, though. You know, you got to be into that, too. Or not against it, anyway. I'm not against it myself, but I'm not into it. I prefer to have Rachel the Wonder Titties. What year is this, I wonder? Olivia Newton-John appreciation thread. 1970. How old was Olivia Newton-John in 1970, I wonder? Oh, Olivia Newton-John. So anyway, what are other three named people besides Olivia Newton-John? She was born in 1948. So she was 22 in 1970. She was pretty damn good at 22. I'll admit that. Now that I've verified that she was over age, she looked damn good in 1970. Okay, so I'm going to return to the chat now to see if anybody's answered my critically important question. Other three named people. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Julia Louise Dreyfus, Osama bin Laden. That's a good one. Okay. So let me. John Wayne Gacy. Look, nobody's going to pick John Wayne Gacy to chaperone their date. Okay. Louisa May Alcott. What did she do? What about Harriet Beatrice Stowe? She wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, right? How about what about those? L's not a name though. What's an initial? That could be a separate category. Alexander Graham Bell. Okay. John Wilkes Booth. All right, so I'm going to create a poll here. We don't want John Wilkes Booth, though. Which three-name celebrity do you want to chaperone your date? Your first date with your new crush. Which three-name celebrity do you want chaperoning your first date with your new crush? I just put should chaperone. Which three-name celebrity should chaperone your first date with your big crush? Okay, so we've got Olivia Newton-John. What are some of the other ones we said? Okay, let me look. Oh, well, there's Alexander Graham Bell. We'll definitely put him. Neil Patrick Harris, right? Okay, good. Neil Patrick Harris. Alexander Graham Bell. Which three-namer should chaperone your first date with your big crush? Okay, so I've got three names so far. We've got Neil Patrick Harris, Olivia Newton-John, Alexander Graham Bell, Jamie Lee Curtis. That's a good one. Maynard James Keenan is too obscure. Jamie Lee Curtis, Ray William Johnson, I don't know. Robert De Niro, that's not one. Daniel Day-Lewis is one. That would count as one. I'm going to put Jamie Lee Curtis and Billy Ray Cyrus. Those are both good ones. Those are the other two, okay? Jamie Lee Curtis, well, definitely Billy Ray Cyrus. He's quite famous still, even though his kid's more famous now, probably. How do you spell Cyrus anyway? With a Y? Ooh, that's a good one right there. Cyrus? How do you spell it? Cyrus? Yeah, okay. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Okay, there's the last one right there. Neil deGrasse Tyson. I like that one. That's the best one, I think, to put on here. Personally, I would never choose him in this poll to chaperone my date. You'd have to hear about I'm gonna put should third wheel you. So the last option was Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah. Well, we've got 4 boys and 1 girl. I try to have 2 and 3. So let me change one of the boys. Let me change Alexander Graham Bell. I don't think anybody's going to really choose him, maybe. Jay's not a middle name. Robert Downey Jr., that's not a 3-namer. Martin Luther King. That's 1. That counts. Francis Ford Coppola. Edgar Allan Poe. I like Edgar Allan Poe. That's a good one. Let's still a dude. We got to find a chick. Because I've got too many dudes and not enough chicks. Or I could do all dudes. I could get rid of the original source of this question, which is Olivia Newton-John, and replace Olivia Newton-John with Edgar Allan Poe. Let's do that. That way you don't have to consider gender at all. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna change Olivia Newton-John to Edgar Allan Poe. Neil Patrick Harris, Alexander Graham Bell, Billy Ray Cyrus, or Neil deGrasse Tyson. Which one do you want to third wheel you during your date with a big crush? During your date with I just put during your hot date. That'll be more NI. There. Now, I was pleased by the response to my last question, which was ice cream is most properly served. I only had 4 options. 129 votes in one day. That's pretty good. We'll see which 3-namer should third wheel you during your hot date. I'm going to pick maybe Alexander Graham Bell. Who do you guys pick? Here's a link to the poll. I'd be curious to get everybody's votes on this important pressing question. Billy D. Williams. Oh, it's too late. It's already posted. I'm sorry. That is an excellent one, Billy D. Williams. Sean Puffy Combs. He's had too many names. You can't identify him clearly as. Okay, we'll do. You know what? Now, next time we'll do all chicks. We've got Mary Tyler Moore, Sarah Jessica Parker, Jada Pinkett Smith, Olivia Newton-John. I think that's 4 right there. You know. So I think I'm gonna go Alexander Graham Bell because here's what I'm envisioning this question to mean. You're on a hot date with your new crush or whatever, right? And there's a celebrity who's eating by himself at a table near you and is kind of entitled, so decides to come over and sit with you guys. And your other person, let's say you're a dude, the other person's a chick. She's like, "Oh my gosh, it's Meow! Oh my gosh, is that really you, Alexander Graham Bell?" Well, Neil Patrick is a clear choice, funny and gay, so he doesn't threaten to steal your girl. Well, okay, well that's fine, but if you're a chick, do you still have the same logic, Neil Patrick Harris, because he's not going to tempt me because he's gay? Who's Andy Gibb? He's the younger brother of the Bee Gees Gibbs, who died fairly young, had some hit singles, and then died of like drugs or something in 1979 or something like that. I mean, I don't think Andy Gibb was actually in the Bee Gees. I think Andy Gibb was the younger brother of the two Gibbs that were in the Bee Gees, if I remember correctly. But I could be wrong. I could be misremembering. I mean, I don't think Neil Patrick Harris would be a great wingman because I feel like I don't care if my wingman is gay or not. I don't want him to out sparkle me, I guess. You know, I'd be like, I don't want the girl I'm with to be like, well, I guess I'll have sex with Eric. I sure wish Neil Patrick Harris were straight though, because I'd really rather get on him. You know, it's like that's not gratifying to me at all, right? So, you know, if the chick's gonna be swooned by the celebrity person, then I don't want to get on her anyway. I'd rather have a straight one to test the chick since it's an early date, right? Because I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, it's pretty funny. Rachel had me see it. I forget what it's called, but Keanu Reeves is in it, and he's playing basically that character, the celebrity that goes to dinner with some regular people and is like a complete douchebag, right? He does a great job of it. It's hilarious. So I'm going to go with Alexander Graham Bell because of all the people listed there, if one of those people is going to blather on about their interests, I'd most like to listen to Alexander Graham Bell because he could tell me about like what it used to be like in the olden days or something. Figure that would be kind of interesting. I'm not allowed to vote on my own polls for some reason, so I don't have a vote, but I would vote for Alexander Graham Bell if I had a vote. But then I just couldn't believe it. I was shocked and dismayed and appalled by the wrongness of the votes on the ice cream question. Clearly, the only right answer is a sugar cone. Ice cream is most properly served in a sugar cone. Okay. Guess what? That got 6%. And the ones that are winning are cup or bowl or waffle cone. Waffle cone? Who chooses waffle cone? Nobody chooses waffle cone. No sane human being chooses waffle cone. Okay, let's just all agree with that, please. Even if you don't agree with me about the sugar cone, why would you agree with anybody about the waffle cone? What's the appeal of a waffle cone? It's too deep for one thing, right? It's not. You don't want your ice cream to be inside the cone. You want it to be on top of the cone. Waffle cones are structurally wrong. The platonic form of ice cream is a ball of ice cream sitting on top of a cone that presses down into the cone a little bit as you eat it. That's maximally attained, bestly attained anyway, with the immortal sugar cone. Now, sugar cones are the brown cones, and cake cones are the regular cones or white cones. You know, regular old, like the white colored kind of, they're called cake cones. Those are regular cones. And they're kind of designed to hold ice cream. So this cylinder part's smaller, and then there's a bigger round part here, presumably to limit the amount of ice cream that drips down your fingers. It drips down onto your hand, except for the fact that, of course, every ice cream place pushes it so it goes over the edges of it. The whole design idea of it is that you only put it in the middle part of the circle, not the outer circle. But that's not how it's ever served. Even if it were served like that on cake cones are, as Oliver Linehan correctly observes, disgusting. And yet they're considered the standard cone. Why? The good cone is the sugar cone. It's your brown cone. I mean, why I have to explain what a sugar cone is? Is this not a human world that we live on? How you do not know what a sugar cone is, I don't know. If you didn't know that the regular kind of cone was called a cake cone, join the party. I learned that yesterday. But if you don't know what a sugar cone is, you do not deserve to eat ice cream. Oh, running fox. No more ice cream for you. A sugar cone is just a regular brown cone. It's the one that instead of having a cylinder with like a bigger circle on top of it, it's just what's that called? It's like a funnel that's upside, it's like a funnel. What's that called? One of those things. Okay, I will be groupist against the uninformed. Fair enough, Oliver Linehan. I accept that critique and stand here before you fully ashamed. I stand before you naked. There was this play that that people would do speeches from in speech class, and like particularly it's a high school play that people like to use in high school. Like girls will use it to be kind of shocking, I guess. And it's very much like it's this horrible kind of drama thing where they, I stand before you naked. Is that what you want? So that's kind of, I don't remember all the details of it. I just remember this one girl on the high school team wanting to do a speech from this play, and I was like, really? Okay. It's like the last thing you want to do is try to get into an argument with a high school girl about like her body and feminism. It's just too thorny a matter to talk to her about. So you just go, okay, you want to do that? You want to do that? Go for it. What was that girl's name? I don't remember what her name was, but I remember what she looked like. I can picture her, but I don't remember what her name was. Anywho, of course I remember Food Cube. Of course. It's on my bucket list is, open Food Cube Caliente, to open. This is all on my Eric's Dream Mini Mall. You made a song about Food Cube? I totally want to hear your song about Food Cube. It's rare that I can honestly say to somebody, hey, I really want to hear your song. I really want to hear your song about Food Cube. You know why? Because you've included me in your art project. Isn't that smart of you to be inclusive in that fashion? Do you have a link to it? Let me temporarily make you a moderator. And you can add the link here, and then I'll unmake you a moderator. Because Food Cube is the future of America. If you think about it, it's a product that is so Tops is so good. You must live near me. They're not very. Are there? I think as far as I know, there's only 2 of these. As far as I know, there might be a 3rd one, but you must live close to me if you know what Tops is. I got for dinner the quarter-pound Tops special, which is of course the cheeseburger with the pastrami. It's like mostly pastrami, but it's got a cheeseburger in there too. You can only ever eat half of it for dinner, so you have the other half for second dinner, and that's middle of the night. You get up, smoke a cigarette, you eat another dinner. Now that is new evidence of my failure to embody empathy. The old double bind, huh?
I accuse you of lacking empathy. Your refusal to play along is simply proof of your lack of empathy. Apparently, there's people who pour milk before the cereal. I strongly hate those people. You know, dumb genius, I agree with you that it seems backwards. And that if it is backwards, hatred is definitely the appropriate response to it. But I'd say let's hold off on the hatred until we can firmly establish that it is backwards, because it might turn out to be that we're the ones who are doing it backwards, actually. California love. California knows how to party. Go to Tops and have a party. Have some burgers and some fries now. All right. Food Cube song. If I play it so I can hear it in the background, will you copyright me? I better put on some headphones just in case. I got a copyright strike today from Michelle Shocked. And you know what's crazy is I don't think the video is still up, so I can't check to see if I'm correct about this. And I didn't sort of file any kind of appeal or anything, but I believe I didn't use any of her music in it at all. Rather, it's a video that says, here's where you can find her album online that she's trying to not make available for people. So it's like, how can I get a copyright on that? That's kind of crazy, you know? Copy link address. It's like, you know, far Q, Michelle Shocked. Far Q indeed.
Hi, it's Eric here. Some important sharing of information with you guys. You're gonna like this. I'm a fast race. Oh yes, I'm a fast race. I want to share this with you right away. Oh yes. Oh yes. It's a familiar color. Why is he next to all the time? Oh yes. Caliente. Fast race. Oh yes. Are qualified to pull and use that color pens. If you have extra gluten all the time, you can buy a license. You can use that fast race. Oh yes. Fast race. I want to share this with you right away. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. It's a familiar color. Why is he next to all the time? It's a oh yes. Don't forget. Fast race. Be kind to yourself. Be good to each other.
It's absolutely spectacular. That's what I put as a comment. Absolutely spectacular. I can't believe it only had one view when I looked at it. It's like, hold on, where are the throngs of viewers? What is wrong with this YouTube algorithm? Does it not recognize when something is absolutely spectacular?
Mashed potatoes go on pizza. I like pineapple on pizza. I've never tried mashed potatoes on pizza before. It's free Rachel again. Don't worry, this is a free range Rachel, so you don't have to so much worry about. Have you heard, by the way, free Rachel? Have you heard "I'm a Fast Race"? Talking to the Famous People remix by Scottster Music. Have you heard it yet? Needless to say, it's absolutely spectacular. Here you go. I'll put the link for you. Or did you get timed out already by somebody else? I'll put the link for you for Rachel so you can enjoy it. Here you go. That's for you. Speaking of YouTube algorithms, why is this suggested for you? Possibly because you've got really, really good taste in media. Possibly because you're extremely interested in me and things related to me. Possibly because you too have a magical butterfly within your heart. Any of those reasons, or a number of other possible reasons, could be the actual reason. This man is an unproductive life personified, stealing the little bit of youth Rachel has left. And if I weren't stealing it, what would that look like? Would it be, would I be compensating her for her presence in some fashion? Would she be earning a paycheck? Would that legitimize my relationship with her? Let's see here. I will go for pineapple and olive. In my opinion, Rachel's not in prison. This person here is accusing me of, I guess, keeping her locked up or trapped or something. I mean, I'm pretty confident that Rachel understands that she's not required to stay with me. I've never indicated that she was. If she didn't want to be with me, I wouldn't want her to stay. I wouldn't want her to be unhappy in that fashion. Well, I mean, I guess, sort of. We went out for ice cream and went to the weed store. It's like, I mentioned this stuff to her this morning. I'm like, what do you think about all that? She just laughed. She was like, I don't know. She didn't even, I think she probably found it hard to believe that that I actually had any thought about it at all. But it is the thing is this, can you simp shame this guy? I don't know if he's a simp or not, but may not even be a dude, maybe a chick. Regardless, I'd say shame them for what they deserve to be shamed for, which is spite. It's true that I guess I didn't get her a gift for Valentine's Day. We're not big gift givers. It's not really our love language. We both prefer to not receive gifts and be absolved of the responsibility to give gifts, I think. Does Rachel have an alternative place? Sure, yeah, she could go live with her dad in New York, or I guess probably her mom in South Carolina. I'm not in any way, shape, or form. Rachel is my girlfriend, and she is currently asleep in the house. She's not been participating in as many live streams lately, last couple of days, but you see her all the time if you hang out around here, and if you've seen she and I interact at all, then you know that we have an incredibly positive, healthy relationship, Thanks, Legends Fall and Winston's mom and whoever, for the various things, the various, evident way or twice divorced. Well,
I'd like to think I've learned from those divorces and I'm in a better, also, qualitatively different rather than just quantitatively different kind of relationship now. It's difficult to stay in a relationship long term with a person that you really shouldn't be with, As FI polar person, I had some poor decision making when it came to you see us in the camera at the same time plenty of time. That's my Alicia Kalma. That's my fish tank. Let's see here. What's with the title though, or should it not be asked? Oh well, earlier today I was feeling really lazy, and it was like I got up at like 9:30 in the morning, and I went back to. I said to myself, I kind of feel like a nap at like 11:45 in the morning or something, and I ended up lying down for about an hour, maybe 45 minutes, and I couldn't actually go to sleep. And during that time, I was thinking about me feeling, I guess, guilty about not being more productive. In other words, sort of self-identifying sloth, and musing about whether, in fact, that is something that ought to be included in this list of 7 deadly sins they talk about, And then after I made that first point about sloth, I thought that's kind of an interesting topic. I wonder what people think about which is worse, wrath or envy. And people have said a lot of interesting things about it over the course of the stream. But my position on it is, if you're using the words wrath and envy, it would seem to me that envy is worse because wrath implies some reactivity that perhaps is at least somewhat just, maybe disproportionate, but somewhat just. Whereas envy is doesn't necessarily externalize, I guess. You could also say it depends whether you're asking which is more harmful to the external world or which is more harmful to the self. You could argue that envy is more harmful to the self than wrath is more harmful to the external world. But my basic question was, is wrath the same thing as spite? Does spite, in fact, which spite seems to say you're causing harm for the purpose of causing harm, not to get even in some way, right? If you're talking about vengeance or wrath or retribution, then it's a different matter. No, I mean, I also recognize that I operate on a varying number of cylinders, so to speak. And when I'm not fully rested or haven't eaten enough, I can feel much different than when I am fully rested and have eaten enough. And those are things that I tend to mistake for something else. So earlier this evening, before I went to Tops, I was in the car. I was like, man, I feel awful. Maybe it's my teeth, or I'm not sure. I just feel really gross and like kind of pukey. And after I ate, I felt great. I was like, oh, you're just hungry, You're just hungry. So it is important for me to manage my SI. And like everybody, it's been something of an adjustment to this lockdown, because here in Los Angeles we still don't really have any indoor dining, and the other kind of outing things that people typically did involve some sort of gathering. So most of those things we don't have here in Los Angeles. James is drunk says I'm also unproductive. You know why? Because fuck SE, right? Yeah, I am conflicted about the issue. It's like I've spent a lot of years being too fixated on productivity. Did I say I was in tune with my teeth? I think I said I wonder if something's wrong with my teeth. My teeth have been hurting. So it's like when I didn't feel well, I was thinking to myself, should I attribute that to my dental problems or something else? I didn't really think or something else. It wasn't until after I started eating that I realized, okay, this negative feeling of SI this negative body feeling is related to being hungry, not to
there be anything wrong with me, right? But I suspect that 69 Cuda, you're probably not genuinely newly arrived. I could be wrong about that, but I suspect you're another incarnation of one of a couple of individuals who continually try to pass themselves off as somebody else. So we'll see. We'll see. Time will reveal. It's like a lot of people come in here and they try to attack from sort of so-called subtle angles or whatever, be combative or confrontational, and hope that they're going to find a legitimate way to engage me that lands a blow, so to speak. And when that doesn't work, they get frustrated and reveal their spiteful ways. Do you know about the Big Five personality test? And is it similar to Myers-Briggs? I'm very low in conscientiousness, so basically I'm also lazy but high in openness. So in general, perceivers tend to be higher in openness. It doesn't always follow because SI DOMs are perceivers as well. But SE DOMs, NE DOMs, NI DOMs will, and to some extent, all be called high in openness and low in conscientiousness. So low in conscientiousness is not the same thing as lazy necessarily. You would not call me conscientious, but most people would also not call me lazy. Maybe the last few months I've been kind of prone to laziness, but historically, my problem wasn't a failure to work enough. It was a failure to choose the right things to work on and to prioritize the right instances of work, or to follow through on all the steps necessary to maximally attain that work, right? It wasn't a problem of not working hard enough. So it's only very, very recently that anybody could sort of even successfully gesture at the idea that I'm lazy. You know, that's not something I've really ever been accused of by anybody who's looking at me objectively. When I got sort of genuine critique from my INFJ friend in the past, it was along the lines of, why are you so fixated on this productivity thing? Why do you feel like you need to be productive to justify your own existence, so to speak? So in some way, it feels like progress to me to be more comfortable doing less. One of what I do for a living, I got a couple of sources of income. I'm a competition debate coach. I'm English teacher, private competition coach, private teacher, and I provide people typological services via YouTube. I think this state's coming to an end fairly shortly as I am engaging in the processes of moving forward with plans and stuff. But I have mixed feelings about it. Most of my negative feelings about it come from a sense that I could or should have done more in terms of being close or getting close to my father in this time that I've had. A sense of just that I'm selfish, I guess. But sound bussy. It's probably COVID getting you feeling lazy like the rest of us. I sound bussy. Oh, you're that person. All right. Okay. Well, now we know who you are. All right. That's cool. Oh, I'm pretty sure I don't have COVID. Go ahead. Time you out. Oh, you sound busy. Oh, my bad. Sorry. My bad. There's a previous spite monkey who was fixated on that word bussy, and I misunderstood that was I just timed him out though. I didn't ban him, so
or her or whatever, him probably. I think mostly people with 69 in their name are probably dudes. My bad. My bad. I jumped to an NI conclusion that was the wrong NI conclusion. To the right one, I guess. Possibly. I mean, it could have been the right NI conclusion, and the person's being tricky, giving themselves a perfectly legitimate justification for it and trying to trap me and successfully trapping me. But of course, leave it to my reliable community friends to point out the mistake so that my bad. Sorry about that. I can't untime you out, 69 CUDA, so I'm unable to do that, but yeah, we needed more info. Right. Yeah, my bad. I still haven't given up entirely on the notion at all that you might be, but that doesn't comprise adequate evidence. So, my bad. It means but, and then PUSSY, which is a dirty word for a vaginal shaft, a vaginal cavern, a body pocket, or velvety folds. Muggity meow. What type are the best debaters? INTPs, ENTPs, and INTJs. But ESTJs can be very good. ENTJs can be very good. I mean, you can, just because in general, INTPs, ENTPs, and INTJs are the best debaters, doesn't mean that in any given occasion, the best debater might not be a ENTJ. No, I get you that he's coming at me. And I indicated that in the previous thing as well. But nevertheless, I think Ben Shapiro is most likely an ENTP. It's a small possibility he's an ESTJ. But to another extent, if I wanted to answer the question in a non-competition debate format, I would say, ideally, the best debater is the person who's correct. The person who's correct has the easiest job to do in the debate, but that doesn't mean they're going to necessarily win. So it's unfortunate that people who are good at debate, by and large, well, they don't necessarily embrace the same sort of meta debate approach that I do, which is to say, I'm not interested in using my powers. I'm interested in analyzing power usage in this format. I really am not interested in winning debates, especially if I'm wrong, I'm much more interested in either teaching, learning, one of those two, and learning comes from losing, not from winning. And people who you beat don't necessarily learn, so teaching doesn't necessarily correlate with winning either. What type do you think Ted Cruz is? He seems like an STJ. I'm not sure, though. He doesn't seem to have very good FE, with his water drinking fiasco. That type of drama is. Oh, that was Rubio. My bad. My bad. I got the Cubans mixed up. Did I get the Cubans mixed up? My bad. It's not a Cuban sandwich. It's a panini. Oh, Marco. Don't get Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio mixed up, please, Eric. That's very racist of you. Is it? Yes. Why? Because they're both Cuban. No, they're not. One of them's not Cuban. Yes, they are. They're both Cuban. Wasn't that Rubio with the water? Yes, it was, and I was wrong. And I hereby hang my head in abject shame. Thanks, Maddie. My shame's over now, so I can come back and talk to you again. Nobody's bullying me. No. There are spite monkeys who come and make a very concerted effort to, I guess, either shit on me specifically or just kind of ruin the sustainability of the chat in some fashion or whatever stuff. I tend to be very pro free expression, so I've been a long time learning to both trust my intuition, also be fair, and also recognize when somebody's just trying to do damage rather than engage meaningfully. So if somebody's trying to engage meaningfully with me, then they're happy to be responsive to what I'm saying, as well as I will be responsive to what they're saying. So in other words, you asked this question, are there people bullying this guy or something? Even though it wasn't directed to me, I'm happy to answer it. I'm answering it directly based on what you say. Some people come in here and they don't respond to what I say. And if they continue to attack me and be non-responsive to what I'm saying, in other words, not treat me as a human being, but rather just as an object of attack, then it's a waste of my time and energy because, you know, they might actually end up getting some sort of headspace after the fact. Just because I'm in their head all the time doesn't mean I want them in my head, you know. Yeah, if I misread you, my bad. I didn't mean to jump. I did jump to a conclusion, but I didn't mean to. AOC has big milkers, does she? Are there naked pictures of AOC somewhere online? Isn't envy another version of wrath? Well, see, my claim about these 7 big sins is that gluttony subsumes lust, sloth, and greed. The greed, sloth, and lust are all forms of gluttony. Don't you think so? I'm assuming AOC is an ESFP based on her politics and her sort of general approach, but she kind of won a recent media exchange by being the more rational party, but that's typically not the case. So, you know. Big milkers is a good expression, by the way. That's a good word for boobs, is milkers. I like it. It's not a term I've typically used in the past, like, hey, love those milkers. You know, how your milkers doing? You need me to check those out for you? You need me to adjust them a bit? Yeah, this one ended up getting skewed a little counterclockwise. Let me just sweater cows. Sweater cows is a fantastic name for boobs. The thing is, ENFPs are susceptible to. ENFPs typically fall back in response to pushback. ESFPs double down in response to pushback. When ESFPs are wrong and they get pushback, they always double down. They never are dissuaded. AOC's got that quality, you know. Exhibit A, file SCDN, sharenator.com, 2020. I will click it. I will find out the truth. That's AOC. She's got boob enhancing bra on, I bet. I don't think those are her. If that's her, if she has no bra on, and she's decently breasted, like she's like full, but I don't believe those are really her boobs. I think she's got on a padded bra. Those boobs don't appear to naturally occur with that body, really. They seem enhanced somewhat by the clothes she's wearing. Well, from her, she felt like she was almost killed, Hal Taylor. It felt emotionally like she was almost killed. So she was almost killed. That's ESFP. Yeah, I mean, I admit AOC looks pretty good in that picture, right? She does. She looks pretty good in that picture. The proverb, I believe, is, "I wouldn't kick her out of bed for eating crackers," is the expression. Of course, I'd kick her out of bed because that's not my girlfriend. But regardless, the 7 are always apparent in everyone but ourselves. I mean, I recognize in me occasions of lust that would qualify as sin, which comprise, I guess, scoping out some chick who's jogging as I'm driving by or something. It would be a very minor example of a sin in terms of expressed action. If you want to say, like, every time you think about that random chick's boobs, you're committing adultery in your heart. If you want to take that kind of approach to it, I don't know. I don't buy that. I believe that a person's mental space is a conditional space. So it's like how you understand that aspect of things has a lot to do with how you understand your epistemological space. If you're a knower, then you're going to have a different perspective on that than if you're a deliberator, especially an ideating deliberator like me. I need to know that everything that I'm thinking in my head is conditional, possible. I can examine things safely in my head as symbols of the thing. And I don't have to worry about that representing actuality. So in other words, I can consider the question of whether I should punch someone in the face and imagine the realities that I have as a way of, for example, mitigating my need for some satisfaction, but my desire to actually not. Well, there you go. You fact checked on that. I'm gonna believe Winston's mom on this. I don't doubt that she, in some sense, exaggerated the harm done to her by some statements that Trump made about her. But those are the ones where I'm saying she won the exchange, right? She was right about Trump's statements about her. So in that regard, she won the exchange, right? But I mean, leaf trimmer. Fact checks matter, right? There is something to fact check. Ted Cruz tried to have me killed. AOC. I don't know if she actually said that or not. I'll take your word for it. It wouldn't shock me, right? Because I don't think AOC can be relied upon to use words well. But somebody who says fact check yawn, I don't think they can be relied upon to think well. If you don't think it's possible to fact check something, then you're never going to believe anything that's falsifiable, and there's no point in ever arguing anything then. Oh, Ted Cruz is the Zodiac killer. That's a long URL, Winston's mom. thanks, Adrian B. I mean, if AOC were my wife and arguing with me, then she'd get the same lecture every other ESFP gets until she either broke or left, or I left. One of the two. I don't think I'd ever even start being with an ESFP. I don't think even my FI polar is stupid enough to be with an ESFP or to choose to like be with one. Although maybe that's what my first wife was. I don't know. She could have been a damaged ESFP, or who knows. Is it cold where I is? It is pretty chilly. I got the door open right now, but I got the heater on. Like the exact sort of thing my dad hates. Don't heat the outside. Well, I don't want it to get smoky in here, and I don't want to be cold. So, I mean, what are you going to do? And I don't want to put on more clothes either. I want to wear shorts and thongs. Shorts and flip-flops. You know? Is there a word for positive envy in English? Inspiration, I guess. You know, if you find something to be accomplished beyond which you currently believe yourself capable of accomplishing in an area where you're attempting accomplishment, you can either find it threatening or you can find it inspiring. You might also find it demoralizing. So demoralizing is the more honest side of threatening, right? It's like if you're threatened by something, you're likely to project onto it your own negative qualities and or just hate on it or whatever. But if you're demoralized by something, it's a recognition of the gap that's objective in the sense that it's not favorable to you, but may not be accurate because a lot of one's own perceptions about those sort of things, at least for me, who's NI ignoring, can link in initial encounters with the thing that I'm intuiting about to my mood. So here's the thing. I purposefully, willfully began this live stream without any cigarettes except for 3 cigarette butts because I was trying to constrain myself to I think trying to constrain myself to I lost my train of thought because of a couple of things. One, it's like several things rapidly happen in succession that caused me to completely lose my train of thought. One being Dumb Genius's question, what's the exact difference between inspiration and motivation? Inspiration can be motivational, but it's not necessarily motivational. In other words, a person can be inspired by an idea, but not actually end up following through on it. Just be inspired to ideate about it further and then never actually get started executing it. So motivation is a reason to execute, not just reason to be enamored. And then the second thing that took my attention away is Jeff Shaw's comment. Well, I mean, so my take on that is, I guess that's as long as you could get yourself to wait. Obviously, that's not going to be very effective at the end of a long series of back and forth with you, because it's going to seem like, to me, primarily another instance of that rather than a commentary upon it, right? I also don't mind a certain amount of back and forth, and I think that a certain amount of back and forth is good. Like this commentary on the nature of back and forth and so forth is worthwhile. I mean, if you agree with Jeff Shaw, it certainly is the case that Jeff Shaw, whatever he's advocating be done to leaf trimmer, and I don't know if he's advocating anything in specific should be done, but if he were to be advocating something specific should be done, then he would probably fall victim to the same criteria that he's currently applying to leaf trimmer, even if he doesn't fall victim to it currently. There are instances where the same rule, I think, would probably have applied to him. So I, in general, like to say that I would prefer to err on the side of less banning. And I also understand that leaf trimmer rubs a lot of people wrong. But like Octavio Silva says, the block button is free and easy to use. You can block him yourself. You don't have to be subject to seeing what he says. And, you know, Leaf Trimmer has invested a lot of his time and energy here. Not that that in and of itself is worth anything, because there are spite monkeys who invest a lot of their time and energy here just trying to shit on stuff, right? I tend to evoke a lot of strong responses, I guess. If people don't like me, they typically, I mean, there's plenty of people who might go like, well, I'm just not interested in what he's talking about or whatever. But for people who dislike me, they tend to really strongly dislike me. I'm not quite sure exactly why that is, except I guess I'm an extrovert. I'm not always careful about the FE stuff, and so I guess that provokes people to be very, very strong in their negative reactions to me sometimes. Hi, Abraham. Abraham here is Union SCN. He's my ex-assistant coach at Autonomy / main right-hand guy or whatever. Eric's, what's my IQ? 107. SE finds stuff motivating, and I find stuff inspiring, generally speaking. At least that's what I got on this one Scandinavian Mensa test I took. It was largely physical pattern recognition, but that's the score I got. Is that really my IQ score? I don't know. Sure. Big test tomorrow. What's your big test then? Are you getting an AIDS test tomorrow? Wow. What are you nervous about, Abraham? You've been using a lot of intravenous drugs lately? Sharing needles? I told you to stop that, okay? You need to stop that constant needle sharing with crack addicts. Why are you sharing needles with crack addicts when they're smoking crack and not shooting anything? I don't even know. It's like you don't even need to share needles with them. Yes, Tyler Durden, 107. That's 7 points above average. Oh, a certification test. You're going to get a certificate? You got 112. Looks like you're right and I'm wrong. I agree. The person with the higher IQ is correct. That's a universal law. Don't say that, Legends Fall. That's so harsh, you know? I like Leaf Drummer. God, that's like the harshest thing you can say to somebody. Eric, in your opinion, what's the most important thing I need to know about English for the SAT? Well, you know, the most important thing that you need to know about the SAT is that there are free printable practice tests if you Google printable practice SAT. And you should look at those and do the reading comp and do the writing processes sections, and see how you do. The thing is, when I take the English sections of the SAT, I rarely get 100% on all the sections that I do in it. Like when I work with my 6th grade ISTP girl client, we sometimes work on SAT stuff, and we use those printable tests. And like in the last one, we did 3 sections of writing stuff, and I got 2 questions wrong out of 33. So I mean, I'm not perfect at it either. The ones I got wrong, I got effect wrong, EFF ECT or AFF ECT, and the other one I got wrong was what I made the mistake of going against what I thought was best and choosing what I thought the test would think was best. And so when I make that mistake, I don't really get mad at myself, because half the time I'm right. I'm always right about what's best, but only half the time am I right about what the test thinks is going to be best. In other words, probably a majority of the time, when I think I'm right, but the test is going to disagree with me, the test actually agrees with me. I should just go with it. So, yeah, it's super, super Chinese tiger mom. But you know what? The girl, the ISTP is a pleasure to work with, as long as we're doing stuff like that. So, I enjoy working with her on reading comprehension. I enjoy working with her on the writing sections of the SAT. I also enjoy teaching her conditional logic, because she's super fast at learning it. It's crazy. It's beautiful to watch her just process what I'm telling her and execute complicated representations of sets of statements into symbols. Go from not getting it right with three variables to getting it right with 3 variables, and being consistent about right. It's cool. It feels gratifying as a teacher. Of course, the thing what this really shows is how important it is to pair the student with the material. So it's like she's really, really good at conditional logic, and she's really bad at coming up with random ideas. So writing assignments are a fucking tooth pull with this girl. It's like, okay, so just you need to. So what does this make you think of? Well, it's just Matt, and just silence. It's like the thing about ISTPs, when they don't want to. When you're asking them questions they don't want to answer, they just don't answer you, and they just don't say anything. They're just silent. And it gets very frustrating for me as a teacher sometimes when I'm trying to teach stuff that requires extroverted intuition to Chloe, because she doesn't have even a little bit of it. So I can't sort of work around a weak spot. It's like a blind spot, There's nothing there really. Please tell me you got deleted by Winston's mom. You must have just been too meowing at that point. And you know what just happened? You let Jeff Shaw provoke you into meowing too much. Don't let him provoke you. He's good at that. He's a grade A prime beef provoker. Well, you are rational, Legends Full. Just because you're in. Okay, well, maybe. I don't think she timed him out. She just deleted his comments. She didn't time him out. She just deleted his messages. That's different than timing out. To accuse others for one's own misfortune is a sign of want of education. To accuse oneself of shows that one's education has begun. To accuse neither oneself nor others shows that one's education is complete. Yeah, I mean, you put blame in there instead. I agree with that, basically. Okay, Legends Fall. That's not cool. That's piling on. Well, let me see what it said. Oh, I'm not timed out. I didn't say the guy. That's not cool, dude. No. He did nothing to get timed out there. That's pulling the trigger too fast. Too much trigger pull. Jesus Cristo. My goodness almighty, as they say in Churchtown. It was the other thing? Okay, well, I mean, you were too late to throw that flag, right? You can't throw the flag halfway through the next play. Now you made me reveal my bald hat. Do I receive 100% of my super chat? I receive 100% of the super chat that YouTube doesn't take, which is to say about 50% of the super chat. But, I am really upset at this Michelle Shocked lady who got me our copyright strike today. I am pretty sure I used none of her music in this video or any of her content at all. That all I did was say, aha, I found where you can get this album online that you can't find anywhere of hers, and I linked to it. A Ko-Fi, what's that? The way they do the numbers makes it kind of not easy to determine exactly how much they're taking out, but somewhere between probably 40 and 50%. Plays for people to tip. Oh, Ko-Fi? I mean, that's what this has, all those mechanisms built in, right? It's got super chat. It's got, what do you call it? Super sticker. Someone came in here with the actual math on super chats, even gave what appears on the surface to be a random payment to give Eric a round amount. Really? Huh. Well, I don't know what the actual math is, but it's probably not super figure outable. One of the basic approaches that YouTube seems to have, though, sort of an overarching law or frame of reference or whatever, is I mean, I don't know who it was. Who are you talking about? Oh, 30%? Okay, that might be it. I don't know. I think they make it complicated, like they take different amounts from different tons. For different instances. Give a ton. I don't remember who it is though. Hambone says I should remix all my songs into lo-fi beats for steady relax. That was one of my favorite jokes in BoJack Horseman. Is they're talking about music they like and Princess, whatever. I'm not asking you to give any money, Hal Taylor. That's fine. But I don't ever. I'm not somebody who like shakes the hat or anything. Really, it just doesn't seem to occur to me. You will not find me talking about money very much. If somebody's bringing up the issue of money and stuff, it probably isn't me. I'm going to sink to a level here and play on a dimension you all want. Fuck classification and acceptance of total disregard for thought and let that special feeling like a blanket that lets us sleep. Acceptance of total disregard for thought and that special feeling like a blanket that lets us sleep. I'm going to sink to a level here and play on the dimension you all want. What's bullshit exactly? I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not sure what exactly you're negating. Do you know each other on here? Do you know each other? Do you know each other on here? You know what? I am genuinely actually confused just as to what you're talking about. I don't know. Pacification suggests that, oh, I see. You're saying that my failure to ban leaf trimmer is an example of pacification and my acceptance of a total disregard for thought. I mean, that would suggest that I largely agree with leaf trimmer, don't dispute what he says, tacitly support it, or openly support it. In general, I get into a lot of arguments with leaf trimmer and say, no, that's not true. Sometimes I'm more successful at not getting fighty than others, I guess. Sometimes I'm more in the mood to be provoked and engaged, and sometimes I'm more in the mood to ignore. No, dig deeper. Okay, well, we've already talked about your enigmatic bullshit, so you know, if you don't want to explain yourself in ways that I actually can work with, then that either maybe a shortcoming in my mental capacity or whatever, but nevertheless, I can't engage with what you won't say. So that's all there is to it. Leaf trimmer, again, right now, you're just finished a big fight with various people, and now you're going at Winston's mom. Why is it you want to continually reinforce, I guess, negative relations with all of these people all the time? Well, I mean, I don't find leaf trimmer disingenuous, though. You may find him to be daytime soap opera-ish or anything, or something like that. Or I agree that he's way too bristly or whatever, prickly. But I mean, I don't find him disingenuous. When he's wrong, he seems to be genuinely attached to his wrongness, not just fucking around. I respect honesty, even when I don't agree with the person. Well, I mean, I don't think he's disingenuous, though, Jeff Shaw. Hint, hint, do you get the subtle innuendo there? I do think you're disingenuous. I think leaf trimmer is, if it is in fact the case that he has less deftness in these matters than you, then he also has less responsibility in these matters than you. And again, remember, I just stated a conditional statement. But there's the reality of it. So Jeff Shaw and leaf trimmer together. I've got two hands. Close your eyes. Give me your hand, darling. You and meow, 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 meow. Do you feel the same? Or am I only dreaming? Or is this burning and eternal? And then this is Jeff Shaw and leaf trimmer's hands. Flame and grasp fingers. And together, there's an incredibly sensual, deep, moist, beautiful lovemaking session involving all four fists of the two men combined. and resolving burgeoning prostate problems in each concurrently. With eternal flame blasting on loop in the background. What? Debbie Gibson. Debbie Gibson is the singer of that song. Actually, it goes Eternal Flame, and then Take a Chance on Me by ABBA, and then Dancing Queen, and then back to Eternal Flame. It's a 3-song loop. Take a chance on me, I'll be first in line. Holy Framer, come in Jeff Shaw's wine. Gonna have some wine right now with Jeff Shaw, yeah. Because I'll be Framer, and that is why I'm here. There's 2 songs for you. Jesus. It's like that's Cupid's arrow poking both of you in the butt cheek right now. This has been too long of a live stream. What am I doing still live streaming? I still don't have any cigarettes. What am I doing? I'm gonna turn into an old Jewish man with the matzo ball soup and stuff. Okay, well, I agree. Legends Fall fucked up a little bit tonight, but he didn't fuck up enough to have his mod removed. Okay, I will agree with you. He jumped the gun a little bit, and then he tried to claim, oh no, I was flagging that play before, which is, kind of doubling down on his wrongness. We're gonna let that slide. We're gonna prescribe him 1 hearty bowl of matzo ball soup. Okay, so Legends Fall, please sit, have some matzo ball soup. What are you doing here? Come on, sit down. Have some matzo balls. Have some unleavened bread. Have a menorah. Have some Jewish Christmas presents. Everything. Okay. Okay. That's a stronger argument, Legends Fall. That is a much stronger argument. That you might get away with that argument around here. Legends Fall astutely points out the theme is wrath, so it was appropriate. He was just demonstrating. That's a pretty strong argument. I can't really disprove that was his thinking on the matter. So, okay. I mean, am I a fuck? Sometimes, I guess. Which I hope would be indicative that I try not to be. I try to be honest about it, obviously sometimes oh, thanks, 69 Cuda, appreciate it. Sometimes I'm much more of a fuck than other times, So I'd like to think I can distinguish between those states of being and be honest about the frequency with which I am in one or the other state. Remember, just because you lose the exchange doesn't mean I was being a douchebag. It's possible to lose an exchange with dignity and win an exchange in sort of a classy way. You don't have to bite off a chunk of someone's dignity every time you beat them. Hey, but all right hand also, that's not who he is. That's who he's being right now, right? And that's the message I have to, everybody is, let's remember that everybody's human, give them a chance to grow, etc. Is it true that Ben Shapiro's sister has big milkers? Huh. What sucks? Does it suck that bad when you're first in line and your mom gets mad because you stole her vine? Okay, I'm going to go. Thanks for being here, everybody. Actually, you know what? Before I go, I'm going to play a song on the guitar about milkers. Not really about milkers. I could play a song about milkers, I guess. Abby Shapiro has giant milkers. Huh. I'll have to Google her under Google Images and see. Hey, Abby Shapiro has giant milkers, just like glowworms. Team mulberry become silkers, yes, giant silkers. So it is with Abby Shapiro. She's featuring large breasts. Indeed, they're the two things that predominate her chest. Abby Shapiro. Somebody let Ben Shapiro know that I wrote a really respectful homage to his sister. Abby, I just want you to know I've actually never seen you before, but somebody here says you got big milkers, so, props for that. Apparently you teach about being a modest conservative woman on a YouTube channel. Well, there is a theory that floats around out there that says the large milked women, that the breasts take much of the oxygen that would otherwise make it to their brain. But that's just other people's theories, not mine. Don't be so crude, Tiny Man 66. The only way you get away with that shit is because you say you're a chick, and we're not even sure you are a chick. I believe you are, but you don't need to be so crude, okay? Why do these Finnish women got to be so crude? Talking about their bodily attitude. Talking about their boobs and their vagina hole and their buttocks as well. Well, don't you know it's a Finnish woman who's not finished with your body yet? Yes, everybody's very intimidated by the aggressive Finnish woman. Very few are manly enough for that kind of attitude. No, because everybody knows that a woman is really just a very small man. That's what tiny man means. It means woman. Right? You're like a smaller, less important, less human version of a man. That's why we call you a whooper child. You're the yang in my yin. You're the yin in my yang. You're the sin in my din and the pin in my yang. Eric is a fuck, I'm convinced, and behind landscape architects that think they have control, but it's really only nature they try to shape. That's very, very profound, Jeff Shaw. I don't think of myself as having a lot of control. I don't think anybody who's watched me would conclude or heard me or listened to me at all that I'm particularly control oriented. That's fine. What you put there was fine. That's fine too. Just, fucking God, I hate policing shit. You know. So, okay, well, if she had to do it to satisfy your urge for arbitrary TI or whatever, truth, bud. I mean, the thing is, Jeff Shaw, he's saying I'm a fuck, right? How could that really be true? It's like, what are you saying, that I'm willfully trying to treat people as less than me? That I'm trying to reduce you in some fashion? I mean, I'm not. It would seem to be fair to say you're trying to do that to me. I'm trying to engage with you honestly, and you keep trying to seize the frame, you know? I'm not trying to seize the frame. I mean, I'm being someone I'm not. So, like, how do you think I differ from how I'm acting? Because, of course, the reality is, as I said earlier, I'm basically exactly the same inside as outside. I don't really have a private part, private side. Like, obviously, I have private parts, but I don't have a private side. Basically, I say what's on my mind. When I'm not saying this stuff out loud here, I'm often thinking about what I might say in a live stream later, which I probably never actually followed through on talking about. But I might. Some of it I come back to stuff I thought about on the toilet or whatever. Thought about when I was taking a bath. Leaf trimmer, you're kind of right here in the sense that it's like it's a question of whether I want to. I just leave it there. I don't want to hurt no feelings. When I was younger, it seemed that everything gleamed. I don't know what happened to me, but I've lost that sense of urgency, and I don't think that I'll ever see it again. If you follow my lead, you'll discover I'm loster than you, and you'll want to know the way to get back at to wherever it was you thought you knew. And tomorrow will be just like today. I'll be lost then too. It's a matter of mood as much as a matter of will, and things I do and the direction I point to still seem a part of me. No departedly, and I wonder if I'll ever see them again. So the problem, of course, that Jeff Shaw has is that, that's part of me too. That's the message he would like me to be saying right now. If you follow my lead, you'll discover I'm loster than you. Thing is, when I wrote that song, it was true. That's how I felt. But it's not true anymore. I've grown a lot, People grow over time, right? So Jeff Shaw is where he is, right? He's where he is in his arc, and I'm where I am in my arc. And he's very determined to say that he's more well-positioned to determine the truth about things than I am. That's fine. If he wants to be that, that's okay with me. He can maintain that position, as much as he'd like to. I'm not trying to say he shouldn't maintain that position, but it's Jeff Shaw, I would question the truth of that, because you've not personally, at least, tried to engage me in any conversations. You've always tried to teach me. And you'll notice that, well, because he's better at walking the line than you are, leaf trimmer. And here you are again, having just gotten something of a win in a battle, attacking everybody who's a mod. It's like, do you need to rub sandpaper on everybody who even would attempt to be your ally for a second? It's just like, stop, dude. Stop digging, right? Eric always said he's free game. Yeah, we're not welcome to attack me. I don't care about attacking me. People really get banned quick if they attack Rachel. I'll put up with a lot of attacks before I ban somebody. And they have to be clearly personal. Once I identify you as that same spite monkey who keeps coming around, then that's a different matter. Then I might as well just ban you because you're just another account for the same person who's going to do the same bullshit every time. So that's fine. That's one thing. But if you're not consistently disingenuous, I'd rather give you a chance to grow too, like everybody else here, including me. I'm not claiming to be fully grown or anything. I do reject the claim that Jeff Shaw's enigmatic gestures comprise meaningful wisdom, but that's my position on it, and I don't give a fuck if he thinks so or not, I absolutely reject his defaming portrayal of me as somebody who is himself disingenuous. I am not disingenuous. I am very genuine, very non-deceptive, very open and transparent. The me you see is the real me. So I categorically reject his claim that I am somehow being fake, just for clarity's sake. And I think that if he were good at knowing, then he'd stop being threatened by me and would concur that, in fact, I am genuinely open, transparent, and who I appear to be. It's like, if you think about it, if I were being fake, if I were having to work to do this, why would I do it so much? This has to be the most natural, relaxing thing in the world, practically, for me to do it this much, right? If it's really hard work, gosh, I sure do wish that something more productive than this would be the easy way for me, right? Like, I hope you are listening. I made it clear that I'm categorically rejecting your claim. You made a defaming claim about me being basically a fake person, saying that I'm pretending to be somebody I'm not. Except there's absolutely no evidence of that. I've made over 5,000 videos, spent countless hours talking about random stuff with random people. Even if it were originally some fake character I were playing, at some point, right, you become what you are all the time. You can't claim that somebody's something other than what they are all the time. So, you can play, oh, fuck that, but sometimes you need more than just the gestures of like gesturing at NI or whatever. You got to actually have some ammunition in your gun. You can't always walk in with a fake gun and expect it to work after the first time, maybe. Or it's never going to work with me because I'm an expert at telling fake guns from real guns, you know? So, you know. Okay.
I'll keep that in mind, Jeff Shaw. I can't, right? It's like I'm married to the narratives I've been speaking for publicly for the last 7 years. I've been consistent in them, broadly speaking. I mean, there may have been growth, not necessarily with cognitive functions, right? Like with cognitive functions, I've grown in my understanding substantially. I was much more wrong at the beginning and much less wrong now. With philosophical matters, I've been consistent in what I'm saying, and with moral stuff, you know? So it's like, given my prioritization of symbols and statuses and shit, hypocrisy is death to me because it robs me my capacity to win the argument. It robs me the capacity to maintain a moral high ground. So you can reliably count on me to behave as in accordance with at least those negative prescriptions that I indicate, because otherwise I see it as giving up everything that matters argumentationally. Forget about the actuality of it, right? In other words, anybody who wants to condemn me for being not adequately human should do so in the following way. You don't really care about the people. That's not why you're making your moral choices. You care about your own arguments and not being able to be accused of being hypocritical. That would be a fair critique of me. It plays out the exact same way for everybody else, though, right? In other words, you can reliably anticipate that I'm going to do, at all costs, avoid wrongdoings that make me into a hypocrite. Because then I lose all moral high ground and I can't say shit anymore about anything, basically. Like if I were to cheat on Rachel or something, my whole shtick would collapse. And you might say, well, if you say it's a shtick, Eric, you're admitting that it's fake. It's constructed in the same sense that everything about me is constructed because I'm made out of language mostly. So it doesn't make it fake, though. Is that Kitty? What was that? That's not Kitty. I've got to go get more cigarettes. I can't believe I started this lecturing 3 hours ago with 0 full cigarettes and 3 butts. And I am still here. That is a miracle of non-smoking. The more direct you are, despite consequence, actually promotes growth. And you know that. And it's absolutely not the case. It totally depends on who I'm talking to. If you're saying, I'm guilty of using too much FE, you're wrong. If you're saying, I use some FE, you are correct. If you're saying that makes me fake, you're wrong. It's best when I am able to be very honest and very clear, but also present things in a way that allows the other person to retain dignity in the face of being attached to their wrongness, to the best of my ability. I'm not always able to do that, and I don't always prioritize that. I do think I should generally prioritize that, and not always. So I recognize that I fall short in a variety of areas. I would hate to no longer feel as though I had room to grow. I definitely feel like I have plenty of room to grow. I'm not full grown or anything. Okay, so anyway, I got to split because I got to get cigarettes. See you later. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to eat plenty of barnacles from the side of a ship.